Okay, it is Wednesday night, as you can see on the overhead there, July the 5th, 2022, and we're studying from 1 Kings
This is the 6th.
17 and 18. It is the 6th. I don't know who put that up there. Somebody ought to kick him in the shin or something. It is the 6th. Let's clear the air. You're not in la la land. I just made a mistake, that's all. Perhaps I have. There's another mistake I made. I only got half of this map on here, and I wanted to show you the entire map of Israel, and especially Sidon up there at the top, because I was wanting to be a page to remind you that Ahab, as we studied last week, had married himself to Jezebel, who was from Sidon. And when he married her, he adopted her religion and began to worship Baal, and he built a great big temple-like thing there in Samaria for Baal worship. And so he was leading Israel, the northern kingdom, further astray from God. If you remember what we'd studied up till now, the kingdom had split at the onset of Solomon's son Rehoboam, and Rehoboam had only been able to retain Judah and Benjamin, and the northern tribes all went over to Jeroboam. And we went through several kings there and have arrived now at Ahab. In the course of things, as they developed that northern kingdom, they initially, right away, Jeroboam put golden calves up as a way of separating the religion of the north from the religion of the south. And so now this further step is even worse, because now he's married himself, Ahab has married himself to Jezebel, Sidon, and brought in apparently an even worse kind of religion into that time and culture. 1 Kings 17:1, now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, and before we go any further, I'll point out that, I don't know, maybe I should just do a little test. Can anybody tell me where Gilead is? Do you remember? Okay, well, we're doing our map stuff. We wanted to remember that Gilead is this area really over here on the east side of the Jordan River. It's kind of referred to more or less in this area right here. But at other points in the Bible, you get the feeling that it's just this big, everything on the east side of the Jordan there between the Galilee and the Dead Sea. But that's where Elijah is from. He's from that area, and from the city is called the Tishbite. So he would be about right in here. I think I've got a map that shows a little better where he's from. It would be about right in there, just west, they say when they try to tell you where it is, just west of Mahanaim. And there it is. Right here's Mahanaim. And Tishbe is down here, just west and south of Mahanaim. I had to put it in because it's really not real well known exactly where it is, but they know that it's in that vicinity pretty well. Now, the next thing we're going to find is that he was he had to go say something to Ahab. See, first verse tells you that. He said to Ahab. So what did he do? He had to go from where he lived in Tishbe over there to Samaria. So he crosses the Jordan and goes over to speak to Ahab. And this is what he says. Elijah says, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, therefore, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. The word of the Lord came to him, saying, go away from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, or Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. It shall be that you will drink of the brook, and I will have commanded the ravens to provide for you there. So off he goes over to the creek or the brook of Cherith, and he stays there beside that brook, according to the command of God. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord, for he went and lived by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he would drink from the brook. What a life!
Then you're served.
Yeah. This is God's Air Force, bringing food in. It's bread and meat. Here comes the bread. Here comes the meat. Like a sandwich. There you go. I'm not envious. Let's just say that I'm not envious. I don't want to have to go through that. That's a life, as you might say, you'd already ahead of me for the birds. Okay. It happened after a while, but the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land, and the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and stay there. Behold, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you." Fascinating to me that he says, okay, we're done here at Cherith, the brook's dried up, we're going to give the blackbirds, the ravens, the rest. We're going to take off. We want you to go all the way up there to Zarephath, which is right there next to Sidon. That just fascinates me. Why? Well, because Jezebel is from Sidon. It's like, just go right up there in front of her people, But off he goes up to Zarephath. That's what he does. So he rose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, "Please get me a little water in a jar that I may drink it." As she was going to get it, he called to her and said, "Please bring me a piece of bread in your hand." Probably tired of having the birds good. But she said, "As the Lord your God lives, I have no bread, only a handful of flour in a bowl and a little oil in the jar." In other words, we're completely out of everything, except we got just this much left. Elijah. "And behold, I'm gathering a few sticks," she says, "that I may go in and prepare for me and my son, that we may eat it and die." So that the terrible weather, you think you have bad weather here right now, this is a drought, very serious, so that people are dying from not having water on their crops, and being able to have bread and meat. So this is what she does. She says, I'm ready to give it up. Me and my son are going to have this. This is our last bit, and we're done. We don't see any other prospect going forward for food. Then Elijah said to her, "Do not fear. Go do as you have said, but make me a little bread cake from it first and bring it out to me." What a deal. "And afterwards you may make one for yourself and for your son. For thus says the Lord, God of Israel, the bowl of flour shall not be exhausted, nor shall the jar of oil be empty, until the day that the Lord sends rain on the face of the earth." So how do you think she felt about this?
What have I got to lose? I'll try.
I think that's a pretty good answer.
I'm going to die anyway.
One day less, what's the difference?
Yeah.
So she does. She decides to obey the word of the Lord. It says, verse 15, "So she went and did according to the word of Elijah, and she and her household ate for many days." And it says the bowl of flour was not exhausted, nor did the jar of oil become empty, according to the word of the Lord which he spoke through Elijah. Now, I don't know if it occurs to you to think of this, but there's a certain sense in which this is a preview to the hand of Christ. How so?
He brings life.
Okay, he brings life, but I'm more in reference to an actual miracle of his.
Oh,
Like those and fishes.
Loaves and fishes, yeah.
Feeding of the 5,000.
Now, when he fed the 5,000, he just kept going back to the bag again and again and again and just kept passing out the bread. Passing out the bread and passing out the fish and passing it out. And he just kept bringing it forward, and somehow it was all there all the time. And this is very similar to that. That is, every time she goes back to get flour, there's flour there. And every time she goes back for oil, there's oil there. So she's probably cooking up a storm here, and everybody in the neighborhood is wondering, where in the world does this widow woman get her victuals anyway? This is amazing. Now it came about after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became sick. So her little boy becomes sick. And his sickness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. You can imagine. He died, basically. I think that's the answer to that. There's no breath left in him. And so you can imagine her consternation. So she said to Elijah, you can understand her feelings, I think. What do I have to do with you, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my iniquity to remembrance and to put my son to death. So, how is she digesting this? How is she dealing with her son's passing away or dying?
God's fault.
It's God's fault? Maybe. Maybe. How so?
Well,
It's kind of like you've come here, Elijah.
yeah, you're a man of
You know,
God.
maybe if you hadn't
You
showed up.
represent God, so
She doesn't really have any, she doesn't have an awful lot to say. She says about what she can hear because, truthfully, she had planned to be eating her last meal that she's lived on is pure and simply at the hand of God. So she has this strange way of kind of digesting this whole thing, although I think people always deal with calamity, at least some of us always do, in this way. What did I do wrong? What have I done? And that's where she is. She says, you've come to bring my iniquity to remembrance. I must have done something wrong. Now you're bringing it by the fact that you've come to me, and this son and I have been able to live through this, and now he's dying in spite of all that. Man, you've come to me, and obviously you're putting me through this because I've been sinful. And I think everybody kind of has some of that they think about sometimes. I go through this because I've been sinful. What's that?
I have the New King James, and it asks a question there where it says, have you come? So she's real confused about why, is he doing this or what's happening? Because it just asks a question. Have you come to bring me my sin to remembrance and to kill my son?
Puts it
have
kind
you
of,
done this? Yeah.
puts it back on Elijah himself. Is this the reason you did this, to make my sins be remembered to me?
She really doesn't know who Elijah is, and that's why she's confused as to
There's
why this
some
happened.
Middle Eastern Jewishness to this, that kind of just, I don't know if you've ever listened to people from a kind of a Hebrew background that says this, kind of speak in this stilted sort of way. Have you come to bring my iniquity on me? Have you come, what do I want to do with you who showed up to remind me of my sin, and to put my son to death? he said to her, "Give me your son." Then he took him from her bosom and carried him up to the upper room where he was living and laid him on his own bed. He called to the Lord and said, "O Lord my God, have you also brought calamity to the widow with whom I am staying by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and called to the Lord and said, "O Lord my God, I pray you, let this child's life return to him." And you can kind of imagine that this Elijah, I don't know how old Elijah was. The artists all make him different ages, and I think that's probably good because I don't think we really know exactly what his age is at this point, but he lays himself on this child 3 times and prays. And so this is what happens then. The Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the life of the child returned to him, and he revived. Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." Now, do y'all remember that there's a guy that follows Elijah, and Elijah takes his mantle and puts it on him? Do you remember what his name is?
Elisha.
Elisha. Is there a similar kind of event in Elisha's life that you can remember?
Yes.
Yes, there is. A woman has a son, and he starts in one day and says, "Oh, I had my head." So, don't forget this story in sort of reflecting it forward, because there's a way in which our writer wants you to see Elijah and Elisha, that there are these similarities between the two of them, and so that's something you should keep in your mind as we go through these passages about Elijah and then Elisha a little later on. So he brings the child back to the little boy's mother, the widow of Zarephath, and gives him back to her. Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth." Okay, so this proves to her in a kind of a final way that Elijah is a man of God. What would prove it for you?
The Lord answered his prayer.
Okay, what would prove it? If you knew somebody and you're kind of thinking, well, they're a pretty good guy or they're a pretty good gal, what tells you, makes you have quite a lot of confidence that that person is a man of God or a woman of God? This seems to have sewn it up for her. What sews it up for you? Well, for me, it's all about character and how they respond to life. Several people in my life have been, I just thought highly of them. They had such a grand faith and behaved in ways that you kind of go, wow, that the Spirit's really working on them and helping them. One is Calvin St. Clair. He was a preacher at the Webb City Christian Church before I got there. I was still there when I got there as a kind of an elder and a worker in the church. He did janitorial work and took care of things around the church. Both he and his wife were fantastic. There was a young man that he just lived in squalor, not really all that young, probably closer to 40, and just horrible conditions. He had bad legs, and Betty used to go and trim his toenails. I just can't imagine, it's just I mean, I suppose that somebody has to do it, but she did it for nothing, you know, she did it because it needed to be done. And, she just impressed me that she cared about him that much. Nobody had to do that for him. She did it, she went and did it. And Calvin, when he was dying, it was more of a time of almost giddy delight. You know, oh boy, what's next? I get to see what's around the corner. I know, I've been looking for this day all my life, and here it is. I'm going to get to see. You know, so it was just a really beautiful time when he passed. So there's, you know, I'm just saying that there are things that help me to understand that there are people who really do live close to God and love Him so much. And those are the kind of things that prove it for me. But this case, Elijah was able to raise her child from the dead through prayer. And so she says, well, now I know you're with God. Okay, 1 Kings 18. Why? To me, there still needs maybe a little bit more reflection. Where is she from? This is the widow of what?
Zarephath.
And Zarephath is kind of a sub-town to who? Sidon, yes. And Sidon is exporting what for religion? Baal worship. Yeah, they're exporting Baal worship. And so she, right here underneath the purview of all these Baal-type people, she comes to believe in God faithfully and in this man that's come to help her. And she helps too, obviously. 1 Kings 18, now it happened after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the third year. What year? What third year from what? Third year of the drought. Yeah. He said that it wasn't going to rain till he said, and so here it is. It's the third year. It's been a while since it's rained. Go show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the face of the earth. The Lord says this to him. Go show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the face of the earth. So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. So he gets up from where he is in Zarephath, I suppose, and begins his trek down to Samaria. Now the famine was severe in Samaria about this time. Is the way the writer is trying to help you understand this. While God is telling Elijah go down to Samaria, in Samaria, Ahab is, verse 3, Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Now, Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for when Jezebel destroyed the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave and provided them with bread and water. So he saved those who were fearing God from this Jezebel, and that's the extent of his faith, that he saw what was needed, that if somebody didn't step up, Jezebel was going to kill all these prophets, and so he said, I can take care of that. And he volunteered and got in the path, you might say, of the eventualities that were certain to happen, and made a way for these prophets to survive. Then Ahab said to Obadiah, go through, and this should be understood, I think, probably, what Obadiah is. Obadiah was over the household of Ahab. This means that it's his business to see to things like food and trying to take care of animals and that sort of thing. So Obadiah is an officer in Ahab's court. What does that tell you? I don't know, for me it tells me, don't be too sure about people just because they're who they're working for. You know, just because who their employer is. Don't be so sure. Obadiah is in this nasty king's court, working underneath Jezebel, although he obviously doesn't agree with her and is actually rebellious, secretly rebellious to her. Obadiah is a fascinating guy. I really like him. Go through the land, Ahab said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the valleys, for alive and not have to kill some of the cattle. So they're hoping that they can find something that they can provide provender to the animals and not have to kill them all. So they divided the land between them to survey it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. I'm assuming, because of the fact that in just a moment or two, as you can see this verse, if you're reading ahead there, Obadiah and Elijah meet each other. So I'm assuming that Obadiah went north and probably west, and of course Ahab would have probably gone south. Now, as Obadiah was on his way, behold, Elijah met him. Because Elijah, you remember, God had said, now you need to go talk to Ahab and tell him, hey, the rain's going to start here in a little bit. So this is it. Now, as Obadiah was on the way, behold, Elijah met him and recognized him and fell on his face and said, is this you, Elijah, my master? What does that tell you about Elijah's reputation?
He was a godly man, people knew him.
He was a godly man. People recognized that he was a godly man, didn't they? They knew that this Elijah was a man of God. And Obadiah knew it. And try to remember that these people are in the northern tribes. They're not in Judah. They're in this group of people that's broken off from Jerusalem, and now they've been fed two different religions by now, and very forcefully trying to make them walk after the way of first these calves and now Baal worship. And here is Elijah, the man of God. Here is Obadiah, obviously a servant of the Lord, and they are meeting up in this country. They'll never figure that there aren't any people left who love God. They'll never figure that God's not working. He is all the time. He said to him, it is I, Elijah says to Obadiah, it is I, go say to your master, behold, Elijah is here. So there's apparently some kind of communication that's been kept up so that Obadiah would know where Ahab was, and Ahab would be able to communicate back and forth with Obadiah as they went on this search. So this is what Elijah leans on. He says, it is I, go say to your master, even behold, Elijah is here. He said, what sin have I committed? Here we go again with that same stilted language. You know, what sin have I committed? Obadiah says to Elijah, what sin have I committed that you're giving your servants into the hand of Ahab to put me to death? As the Lord your God lives, there's no nation, kingdom where my master has not sent to search for you. Why do you think that Ahab was trying to find Elijah so desperately?
He wanted to kill him.
He wanted to kill him. Why would he want to kill him?
He was the last of the prophets.
Okay, he's one of the last of the prophets.
He's the man that troubleth Israel.
Now they say he troubles Israel, yes. What does that mean? You troubler of Israel, it says a little bit.
He's throwing him into frenzy, I guess.
Yeah.
Trying to get people to turn back to the Lord instead of...
What if there's a fellow who has, sort of his feet in the ground, as it were, and everybody else is turning away, everybody else is going their route, and they're just saying, oh, this faith, this religion we used to have, it's no good, it's not true, we're going to go this other way, and then somebody stands in the gap and says, no, the Lord your God is still the Lord your God. You're going to have to come back to him and serve him. You can recognize it now or you can recognize it later, but you'll recognize it. See, that's the kind of guy Elijah was. And we need some guys like that. I mean, I'd like for somebody today to be a troubler of the United States of America. Need be. As the Lord your God lives, there's no nation, Obadiah says to Elijah, where my master's not sent to search for you. And when they said, he is not here, he you made the kingdom or nation swear that they could not find you. He really wanted Elijah badly. And now you're saying, go say to your master, behold, Elijah is here. It will come about when I leave you, that the Spirit of the Lord will carry you where I do not know. So when I come and tell Ahab that he cannot find you, he will kill me, although I, your servant, have feared the Lord from my youth. So this is Obadiah's concern. He knows that Elijah has this sort of history of not being where anybody could find him. And if you think about the two places where Elijah went in our story so far, you can kind of get that Elijah went to this brook and stayed there, and it was so distant and so remote from anybody around. Nobody knew he was there. Birds carried his food to him. So nobody knew he was there. And that's what Obadiah is relying on, that knowledge of Elijah being that kind of character. He said, look, if I go tell him this, sure enough, we're not going to be able to find you, and I'm going to be in trouble. So that's what he's concerned about. He goes on, has it not been told my master what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, that I hid 100 prophets of the Lord by 50s in a cave? And by master, he means at this point, he's switching masters, so to speak, because Elijah said, go tell your master, meaning Ahab, and Obadiah says, has not been told to my master, meaning who? Elijah. Here, that's what he's saying. Elijah has not been told to you, Elijah. Has not been told to my master what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, that I hid 100 prophets of the Lord by 50s in a cave and provided them with bread and water. And now you are saying, go say to your master, behold, Elijah is here. He will then kill me. Elijah said, as the Lord of hosts lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. So Ahab was out here in the middle of the country somewhere trying to find provender for animals and so forth, for people, and he gets this message from Obadiah, hey, I've got Elijah, come see him. And so Ahab wants to see him, and he goes to see him. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is this you, you traveler of Israel? And that's what Al and I were in reference to there. These are Ahab's words. You traveler of Israel. In other words, you're the guy that keeps standing up for God. If we could just get rid of you, we could go on our way, everything would be smooth sailing, and we wouldn't have to deal with your religion anymore. So that's the kind of thing he's saying when he says, you troubler of Israel. Elijah says back to him in verse 18, he said, I have not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have. Because you have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed the Baals. Now then send and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. There's a lot in there to me. For one thing, that's 850 people. That's almost twice the number of people as kids attended my high school. We probably had around 400 or 500 kids in high school. That's a lot of people. Twice as many as I went to high school. You can figure it for something in your life, what that compares to. Nearly 1,000 people who are, that the only thing they do is they serve as these prophets of Baal and of this Asherah. And they all, I notice, eat at Jezebel's table. Jezebel, in this horrible time of famine, is seeing to it that they all get to eat showdown and prove that Elijah is not all that, then everybody will drop this old idea of religion and following the God of Israel, and they will begin to worship as I do and as Jezebel does. And so he gets everybody together at Mount Carmel. Elijah came near to all the people and said, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? So when he says he came near, I think what it means is he got their attention. He got up in front of them and says to them these, just a few short words. He says, how long will you hesitate between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people did not answer a word. They just sat there kind of like, yeah, and? So then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left of the prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Now let them give us 2 oxen, and let them choose 1 ox for themselves and cut it up, and place it on the wood and put no fire under it. And I will prepare the other ox and lay it on the wood, and I will not put the fire under it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, and the God who answers by fire. He is God. So this is what Elijah sets up. He tells the people this. Look, we're going to have a trial by fire, if you like. We're going to have a trial, and the deal is we're going to put these 2 butchered animals up here on the altars, and these Baal worshipers are going to cry out to their God, and I'm going to cry out to my God, and one of these gods is going to light a fire, and we're going to see an amazing thing here. And all the people said, that is a good idea. I don't know what all they might have been thinking. I know one of the things I've been thinking was, man, I could use a barbecue about now. This famine has made me very hungry. So they might have been thinking that way. I don't know. All the people said, it's a good idea. Let's do it that way. So Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose 1 ox for yourselves, and prepare it first, for you are many, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. Then they took the ox which was given them, and they prepared it, and called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, Oh, Baal, answer us. But there was no voice, and no one answered. And they leaped about the altar which they made. And it came about at noon that Elijah mocked them. I love this part of the story. That's an insight to my character, probably. It came about at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, call out with a loud voice, for he is a God. Wake him up. Either he is occupied or gone aside. By occupied is thought that maybe he'd gone to the outhouse. Maybe he's occupied or gone aside, or he's on a journey. Or perhaps he's asleep and needs to be awakened. You guys are going to have to make more noise, you Baal worshipers. You've been making noise all morning. Make some more. Maybe you can get him going here yet. By your effort, maybe you can get him awake.
Holler louder.
What's that?
Holler louder.
Yeah, holler louder. Holler louder. I worry sometimes about Christians in this respect. I sometimes feel that people are only convinced that God is doing anything mighty and real when there's a lot of noise. And that is simply not the case. So they cried with a loud voice and cut themselves according to their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out of them. When the midday was past, they raved until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no one answered, and no one paid attention. So that was the story of the Baal worshippers. And then Elijah said to all the people, come near to me. So all the people came near to him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. Wow! To me, this is a big deal. Because what Elijah is saying to these people is, look, you took your leave from Jerusalem, you took your leave from those two tribes, but you are one. You all are one. You're of one altar that offers to the living God. And so that's just wonderful to me that Elijah would think this way and insist on doing this, this lawful, you might say, according to the law, kind of an erection of an altar. And that's what he does. He puts 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob. So the stones he built, with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench around the altar, large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. So a nice sized trough or trench all the way around this stone edifice. And it says, verse 33, that he raised the wood, cut the ox in pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said, fill 4 pitchers with water and pour it on the burnt offering and on the wood. And he said, do it a second time. And they did it a second time. And he said, do it a third time. And they did it a third time. The water flowed around the altar, and he also filled the trench with the water. At the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their heart back again. Not just so they'll know all this, but that these people need to understand that something inward is needing to happen with them. Their hearts are wrong, and it needs to be, they need to have their hearts made right. They need to serve God again. And he's saying that to them. You need to change your minds, change your hearts, turn to the Lord. O Lord, you are God, and that you have turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering, and the wood, and stones, and dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. And all the people saw it, and they fell on their faces, and they said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. They were blown away, depressed, as it were. God had spoken in their time. Then Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let one of them escape. So they seized them. And Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slew them there. Now Elijah said to Ahab, so apparently, I don't know whether this means that Elijah himself was the one who did them in, or whether he just kind of oversaw the execution of these prophets. But in any case, it would have been a kind of a solemn, strange event, and yet everyone understood that they needed to turn to God again. Now Elijah said to Ahab, go up and eat and drink, for there is the sound of the roar of a heavy shower. So Elijah turns to Ahab the king and says, look, this is over, and God's sending rain. Just like I said, when I speak of it again, then there will be rain. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, but Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he crouched down on the earth and put his face between his knees. He said to his servant, go up now, look toward the sea. So he went up and looked and said, there's nothing. And he said, go back 7 times. So 7 times he sends this guy back to look out toward the sea. It came about at the 7th time that he said, behold, a cloud as small as a man's hand is coming up from the sea. And he said, go up and say to Ahab, prepare your chariot and go down, so that the heavy shower does not stop you. In a little while the sky grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy shower, and Ahab rode and went to Jezreel, Then the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and outran Ahab to Jezreel. And that's the ending of what we have for us tonight. Are there any comments or questions that you might want to address? It's a great old story. You've probably heard it dozens of times. But I think it deserves retelling often because we need men like Elijah. We need people who will stand up and say, well, you know, you can say a lot about me, and you can say a lot about a lot of other things, but God's still God, and you're going to have to deal with him. And that's where he ends it. All right, let's close, and we'll be dismissed. Father, we thank you for the day. We thank you for this grand story, not just a story, but an event in which you spoke to men and made them to know that you are indeed God. And thank you for these times in which we live. To us, sometimes they're bemusing and difficult and befuddling, but it helps us to remember that in spite of all of the confusion that lays around us, you are still in your sanctuary, you are still in your holy temple, you're still over it all. You will see to its ending. We trust you for that, and trust ourselves to your hand. In Jesus' name, amen.